Welcome to the Emerging Excellence podcast, where we dive into how people grow, lead, and perform at their very, very best. So today's guest is Omer Riza, a former professional footballer and now coach who's worked across the elite academies, national youth teams, and most recently in the senior management roles in the championship. And in this episode, Omer's going to touch on a whole range of what it's like to actually be at the very top of the sport, the cut and thrust of being in professional sport. And so, Omer, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out on this beautiful Friday morning in sunny UK.
Michael, it's a pleasure. Obviously, it's a little bit later where you are. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the discussion. And once again, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, all good. So just maybe for those who are less familiar with your background, if you could give us kind of the high level, Omer, what's been your career highlights, and perhaps specifically where I want to highlight this is in terms of your experience as a coach as well. I think that would be super interesting to touch on because you've had some really challenging, I think, managerial roles, which, you felt the real pressure of performance, right?
Yeah, thank you. I think obviously there's a few highlights and there's a lot of lowlights as well. I think highlights over the course of my playing career is obviously, getting through at Arsenal from the age of 10 all the way to 20, which is a feat in itself. There's a lot of competition throughout academy football all over the world. So to do that and to get my debut, I thought was a good highlight of my career. To have a professional career and compete at the highest level and be able to, have dabble with national teams and, play in Europe has also been a good highlight of my career. And playing with confidence and I think an energy in football where you feel you're at the level to really cause the opposition a problem. I think when you get to that part in your career, I think it becomes a lot easier. As a coach, I think I've had I've had a lot of hardship through playing as well. But I think that endeavour, that tenacity, and that sort of adversity has helped me get through it. And I think it's the same in coaching. And I think, like you say, I've had some really difficult jobs, and I don't choose. Funny enough, I don't choose these jobs, but it seems like I haven't been able to maybe prove myself to a point where I'm given the opportunity to start something fresh and all on my terms, if you like. Not all on my terms. Nothing's ever all on your terms, but at least a fresh slate and really hone and create the environment and the structures and all the things that go with it to create an elite environment. I think I'm always trying to pick up the pieces at the moment, and it's proved quite difficult. But at the same time, I think it's making me who I am. It's making me better. It's making me stronger. The highlights of my coaching career, I would say, probably passing my pro license. It's not an easy award to get onto and achieve. Becoming manager of Orient, becoming manager of Cardiff, becoming assistant manager at Watford, producing a lot of young players over the course of my career, working with elite young players and elite senior players, and having the opportunity back to my playing career, playing with elite players. So yeah, there's a whole load of great achievements and learnings.
Let's start with what this podcast is particularly kind of focused on, is about emerging excellence. So how you take someone from perhaps wherever they are to becoming exceptional or the elite level. I love that you use the word elite, actually, because I think it speaks to top performers in terms of the leadership. I think we don't typically use that language. We use it in sport, but not necessarily in the corporate world. Tell me, for you, what have you observed, like in terms of your, like in trying to identify talent? What do you look for? What are the precursors before, perhaps, if you're trying to find talent, which isn't, the Ronaldos or the Premier League players right now, especially in the Championship, right? It's like, what are you looking for before people kind of you make it big or give you that real, they've got these fundamentals? What is it kind of that sticks out for you?
I think it's character. I think everyone always talks about character, and it's such a cliche word, but it's such a massive part of the game. I think character, and I think when I see people that care about other people, and they don't have that selfishness, I think it's something that can help them to evolve. I think they're two really important things that I look for, especially at the younger ages. It's you probably wouldn't get a lot of coaches say that, but for me, I think it's really important.
When you say character, what is it specifically? Is it like the grit, or is it more like the ability to handle the pressure, or what is it that you kind of?
I think it's the ability to go about your business in a respectful way, in a way that helps you improve. So you have the fundamentals of being able to learn, take things on board, the way you are with other people, because at the end of the day, you're in a sport environment, and you're in an environment that you're not in it yourself, and it's not only you that dictates how you're going to perform. So if you can't create those bonds and create those attitudes around you that says it's going to help you to improve and get better, then it can be difficult. You can get isolated.
In your journey, like specifically at Arsenal, did you feel like was there specific character development? Because I know from my experience, character wasn't a word I even heard until like my mid-20s, and that was kind of like shocking to me. Now I look back, I'm like it just wasn't a focus. But then from certain mentors, it became like the only focus, actually. And that's what they really kind of honed and focused, or like dialed into me, in terms of like, that's where you need to develop the most. Like, where was that character thing, or where did that come out for you?
I think dealing with hardships over your lifetime builds it anyway, without knowing it.
That's a good point.
If I'm honest, I don't think I don't like to I'm not feeling sorry for myself, and I don't like to say it because it feels like there's an element of not bitterness or. I always feel that I've struggled my whole life in respect of being recognised. So even as a youngster, even when I did something well, it was always is what it is, or it wasn't really. Like someone else would do something and it would have been given a lot of accolade for that. And I've sort of been doing that for a while. Or in my playing career, I was always keeping my head above the water, if you like, until I got to a point where, my confidence was high and I thought, I don't care anymore. I stopped caring. I've always cared, but an element of it is what it is. And even with my coaching, it's like no matter what I achieve, it feels like people don't recognise it, and it's never enough. But for me, like I said, it's made me who I am, and it's made me, I've had to deal with the adversities, and there's been times when, you're like, fuck, I don't know how I can do this. Don't want to do it anymore. How much can I keep being kicked in the teeth, that's the honest truth of it. If I'm honest with you, like there's. I come out of this position now, and there's people that were in my position that are my age or younger that have gone and got things quite easily, and I've not, and I'm like, it's fine, it is what it is, and I'm obviously not doing something well enough, or I need to get better at something, or it's just not my time, and I need to keep proactive and keep working hard to try and achieve it. So
it's. For some context, right, you've come off the back of, you've recently been let go from Cardiff, right, which is an interesting situation in itself. I'm not sure how much you're open or even willing or able to talk about it, but I think I feel like in soccer, and as we call it down here, or at least football, if you speak properly, it's something I look at it and look at Ange at Tottenham, just most recently. It's such a classic example. It's like, wow, in terms of getting kicked in the teeth, it seems just brutal, Omar, from an observer's perspective. What's it like on the being? Because
I I think as a head coach, you have to accept the fact that's why a lot of people don't do it, because you have to accept the fact that you're not going to be in the job forever, and you could go at any time for whatever reason. Yeah. So I think I know it's an old cliche again. I think people say, providing you've got your divorce negotiated already, then it's one of those things that it happens. You don't want it to happen. You want to succeed. You want to be somewhere and create and achieve highly. But I think you have to accept this is the nature of the beast. It is cutthroat. It is ruthless. And hopefully you get to a point where, like Angie's, he's got a vast amount of experience. He's won a lot of stuff, and it doesn't matter that Tottenham have let him go, because he'll go somewhere else, and he'll go quite quickly when he's ready. Whereas my position at the minute, I am still, like I said, trying to, prove to people that what my qualities are and what I can do. And those opportunities maybe don't come around so fast.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's a tough game, right? I guess it's that next level down in terms of the emerging. It's probably not dissimilar. For you, just to touch on the player to coach transfer part in terms of that. Actually, I might even call it a transformation, because that's what it seems to appear like. We see it in the corporate world is that a lot of people really struggle to actually go from like their profession, technical profession, say, into this now different role, which is now very hands off. And what worked here, so let's say in the soccer context, it's very professional competency, the ability to, do a certain skill to a very high degree, and that vision or whatever it might be, to now, which is something completely different, right? And I feel like, how have you found that transition yourself from being like a highly skilled individual to now having the capacity to motivate or drive others?
I think the first thing is there's a difference between being a coach and being a head coach, being a manager. Being a manager is, you're dealing with so many facets of the club. You're dealing with press, you're dealing with fans, you're dealing with players, you're dealing with your staff, you're dealing with the board, you're dealing with outside influences. I mean, for me now, the newest thing that I worry about is, I say the newest thing is that, I've worked with staff now, and I care for them deeply. And I base my decisions on whether I can take my staff or whether it can be right for my staff, rather than whether, the job's good for me. So it's another problem on top of the problems you've already got. And I've turned down a few jobs because I haven't been able to take the staff that I wanted to take, and that's not me not being flexible. That's just me trying to be true to the people that have worked really hard for me. And obviously there are conversations there. I might not be able to take everyone, or can only take one or two, and then further down the line maybe more. But it does become a worry, and it does become a concern, because you care. If you care, these things cause problems. That's the first thing. As a coach, so as a player to coach transfer, like you call it, I think what I didn't realise was, when I was playing, I didn't really have any feeling about coaching. You're playing, you're playing for yourself, and your team, but predominantly you're performing so you get in the team and that you achieve your goals. Yeah. But I say that, but then the caveat to that is, I look back at my footballing career, and as I got older, I really looked after and nurtured the youngsters. So it was a natural thing of mine to do that. Like when I say to people I had no interest in coaching, but then I look back over my career and I say, wow, as I got older, there was some right arseholes, sorry, excuse my language,
that's all right,
seniors that didn't look after youngsters. Like when I was coming through, there were some horrible senior players that didn't care. And there were some that did, and they stick in your mind. And for me, I was always a natural nurturer of young talent to help them, even if they were in my position. I was like, my time's coming, I'm going to help this guy, or whatever it might be. So that was always there. Obviously, the difference is now you're coaching to improve the whole team. You're not coaching to improve one. But fortunately for me, in my coaching, I went from a player to a player coach, where I was coaching the strikers. So it gave me less to think about, and I was an attacker, so I was still playing. It was under Dave Livermore at Histon, the conference at the time when I was just about retiring. So I didn't have the whole package to deal with. And then a couple of years later, I took the team, and then it just evolved for me. And I think evolving is better. And I see young players now coming out of football and trying to go into management. I've seen it so many times, and they might be the best players in the world. And I just do not know how they think. Not one, they've got the right, but two, that they can go into the job and do it properly and well. It's impossible. It really is impossible unless you're such a natural talent that you can do it, which there's not many of. It's a totally different entity, and I'm glad I've had to go down the route that I've gone down, and it's all been in stages and increments, if you like. It's been hard and it's been frustrating, but it's sort of made me who I am today, and hopefully I'll keep improving and getting better.
When you say it's impossible or very difficult for a player to do that, because you've seen, we've got the examples of like Steven Gerrard and Lampard, a few. Rooney's a good, perhaps less, maybe a more uncomfortable example in terms of that transition. How do you guide someone in that process? Is there any specific unlearning you have to do? I'm curious, because we see that in the corporate context is that, like a bunch of skills, like let's say perfectionism as an example, when we work with technical people, that can be a massive flaw if, you're requiring perfectionism from people you're managing. It can be, it can often stop you delegating. So, is there anything specifically you had to unlearn?
I think with players that go into it really early, who haven't really done the groundwork to be where they've got to, they always have someone there who's helping them. With Steven Gerrard, he's getting on with his career and he's gone to other clubs. He had Michael Beale, and obviously Michael Beale had been coaching a long time, and he was. I'm not going to say the brains behind the plan, because you do things together as a team. But obviously, Michael Beale's gone on to do quite well in his coaching and his football, and it can work, I suppose. But and that's fine. But you still need to consolidate, and you do learn on the job. I mean, I still learn on the job now, like things. And there's senior managers that still learn on the job, because if you don't learn, then you don't improve. But someone said something to me interesting the other day, which was someone who's an elite coach who I've known a long time. And he said, it ain't the case that you have to keep learning. You obviously do that naturally, but you have to refine what you're good at, so that people know when you're going into something that you're there for that purpose and for those reasons. That's why they've taken you. You're not going into a job and saying, "Oh yeah, I'm still learning." I know my stuff. But sometimes you got to be able to show people that you're willing to get better and change. But sometimes it can work in your detriment as well. It can be, well, hold on, I don't bring someone in here who is still learning the game and still developing. Yeah. No, we want someone who's going to come in and do the job. So you got to be careful how you want to
position yourself. Yeah. Tell me about confidence, because I feel like, as you mentioned, getting kicked in the teeth, right? Confidence can take a hit. I'm curious it's not something which is really talked about in corporate, I don't think, largely speaking, or looking at people like there's a lack of confidence there. I would imagine it would be a big component in sporting teams, and maybe you tell me otherwise whether that is a focus. And I'm curious, how do you cultivate it? Because I feel like managers, largely speaking, have no idea how to run high performance teams. And so I'd love to hear, first of all, about confidence, and then more broadly, like, what do you reckon, what are the kind of the strategies you're thinking about to run a high performance team? So specifically these highly competitive people who might not actually get on at a very, social level perhaps. And they're like, and you kind of don't want them to, because you kind of want them to be perhaps aggressive or something like that. So if you can talk a bit about, like, how do you approach building confidence in players? And then secondly, how do you then build that into a cohesive team and run a high performance team?
I think building confidence or helping to build confidence comes from, as a coach, from my own experiences, is about how you talk to the players and the messages you're giving them. Right. Because the messages you give them sometimes can be a big factor into them losing confidence or keeping confidence, or keeping confident. So that's the first thing, very important, what you're saying to players, when you're saying it to them, and is it worth saying it to them if it's going to be detrimental to their confidence levels. So that, as a coach, is something you're always thinking about. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I think it's important to, when people lose confidence, to give them confidence by telling them they're doing well, maybe when they're not. Right. So it's like the old cliche again of a manager on the sideline saying, "Oh, well done," or "unlucky." Those things like that. I know people say, it's just talking for talking's sake, but for me, it goes a long way, especially in training, in the environment when you're, day to day. I think it's important for those players. Now, when it comes to self-confidence, now that's probably the biggest issue for players, and how you can try to nurture them to understand themselves. I mean, your behaviours as a coach in respect of, especially with younger players you've got playing in senior football, I think you have to recognise when they have lost confidence and whether you need to take them out or leave them in. Because either or could cause detrimental effect to the player. So I'll give an example. I had a player who I didn't play to start the season because his confidence levels were low and he wasn't performing in training, let alone games. So we had to build him up to a point where I felt he was ready to start playing games. So I wouldn't just throw him in and say, go and get your confidence by performing, which sometimes you can put someone in and they'll do well and the confidence grows. But you just have to recognise what the level of confidence is and who the person is as well, like you said, whether they're introvert, whether they're extrovert, whether they don't mind being, the heart and soul of the party. But if they're not, then they're very deep characters, and you have to be really careful with them. So, and sometimes it's the opposite. And you say, if you're a character who's, I call him in the office, I say, I think you might have lost a little bit of confidence. He goes, no, I feel good. And you're like, I know you've lost confidence, but you're out there and you're like, no, I'm not, because you don't want to feel like you're telling me that, so I don't play you. So they're always trying to manage the situation. But then those players, sometimes you're like, okay, let me go and I'm going to throw you in and I'm going to give you the opportunity now to go and show, because you can deal with the pressures of being in front of people. So there's all different ways of managing different people with different characters again.
I'm curious on the chap who you decided that we're going to take him out and build his confidence. How do you go about doing that? What's the kind of the mental model you're thinking about in terms of actually building it?
I think what's important with that is that you don't just try to do it and not let the player know what you're doing. My conversations with that particular player was, look, I know what you've got. I know how good you are. I know where you're going. I know what your qualities are. You in this squad could be one of the best players in this team and gone. So straight away you're not coming from, oh, I'm building you up because you're not good enough to play. You're already better than what we've got. Yeah. You're young, and your level of where you can go is just the sky's the limit. So you're already putting the player on a level that makes him feel that, wow, if this is how this person feels about me, I am going to get a chance. I am going to get opportunity anyway. So that's how I manage those players from the start. If it entails that, and then the processes of it is recognizing what they're doing in training and whether so if it's an attacking player, recognizing in training where they're lacking. Do they not want to go and take someone on 1v1? Are they turning it down and playing the ball inside? That's a lack of confidence when that's what his key strength is. So then now you create training sessions where you isolate him without him knowing it, or you tell him that we're doing it, and he's practicing it all the time, and he's just gaining confidence in those moments. And then I brought him on in a game, and he scored a goal. And then after that, luckily for him, the team wasn't doing wasn't doing perfect, so it aligned with what I wanted to do with him, and I started to push him in, and he didn't look back till the end of the season. I think he's had a great season, got called up to the Welsh national team, and he's a great kid as well to boot. Character, application, probably a little bit introvert. Again, it's like that. You have to assess who the player is, what he's about, what is his character, how he ticks, and what you need to do to try and help him. So yeah, for me, there's a wide range of different ways and methods of trying to get the best out of the boys. No,
I love that. Talk about high performance teams now, because I think this is a massive gap for most leaders. Like, they don't necessarily come from they haven't seen the role modelling of perhaps other managers. They haven't been to Arsenal for 10 plus years and, see these different managers and how they do it. And of course, your overseas experience too. From that, like, how do you think about building high performance teams? What have you seen? Like, who have you come across who's exemplary? And I'd love to hear why you thought they were so good as well.
I think there's been like varied coaches and environments over the course of my career, where listen, what teams do now, what businesses do now is totally changed from the past. I think in the past it was probably more about the individuals and how good they are to make the environment what it is. Whereas now people try to create the environment to help the players get that extra 1% or 2%. Not just the players, the business. Now, I could be wrong. It could be the case that when I was playing and when I was younger, I was naive and I didn't really see what was going on, because you're so focused on yourself as a player, you're not really looking at what others are doing. I mean, if I have to take some examples, Arsene Wenger, when he coached, he didn't coach, he just watched, and he would pull players to the side and talk to them one-on-one and send them back out. So it was real in-depth information, clear, precise, go and do it. And that was more for me, that was more what I saw from him, which was really sort of impactful. And then I had another coach in Turkey called Giray Bulak, his name was, and he'd done well to a certain extent. But he was honest. Everything he said, he did. My first year in the country, I went out there. I moved out there from Cambridge United. I was playing League One at the time. Went out there, and it took me like 6 months to get in the team. But my hard work, my endeavour, my character, my application, he could see all that. And I remember going in there. My father, who's passed away, in the office, and said, "Look, if it's not going to happen, we'll take him back out, take him back to England, and we can." And he said, "No, I'm going to get rid of a couple of senior players, and come the second half of the season, he's going to start playing." And he was good to his word. Now, if he had said there, "No, I don't feel it's working out," and you can respect it. So I think being clear, being precise about what you want to do with people, I think is really important. And I've never shared that responsibility either, and it can lead sometimes to tough relationships with people. But if you're so open, sorry,
because you're so open, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think because I'm so open and honest that they have to either deal with it or they'll cause you a problem for it. And it's one of those things when you've got a player and he's in the building and you can't just say, right, see you later, you've got a month's notice, and it doesn't work like that. So you have to manage it the right way. But I always feel transparency is the best, whether you like it, whether you like to hear it or not. And I had a couple of instances like that this year. And, I don't think anyone can say he didn't say he weren't going to do this. And I think that's important. Whether it's to my detriment or not, who knows?
Well, you got to live with yourself. I think that's the big part, right, Omer? And it's that's a really, really, when it comes to character, it's you might not like it, but yeah, if you can look yourself in the mirror and go, yeah, I did all right. It's there's worse things, I reckon. Tell me.
I said I'll give you an example of that with a younger player. Oh yeah, the younger player at Watford, I think was like 20, and we weren't giving him a new deal, and we had some things along the season, like, again, these honest conversations. And I said to him, again, don't ask people to ask me for a reference, because it won't be good. So get somebody, and that's to his face, it's like, I'd rather not have somebody ask me, for a reference, and me have to give him a bad reference and not be able to continue in his career. Because that happens as well, which I don't like. I don't think, look, we depend heavily on our friends in the game and our circle. But sometimes, I think you have to use your own, what might be some problem for somebody else might not be for you. I know they say leopards don't change their spots, which is true. So it does help to have, references and stuff. And I'm learning that you do have to do it more, but it has to be with real trusted people that you know. Yeah,
makes sense. In terms of conflict and like navigating big egos, Omer, I feel like soccer's maybe full of them. How do you navigate that, especially when people are on such big money and they, that they get to be quote unquote successful, and how do you navigate that as a manager, and how did you bind people together when you kind of want that confidence part? You want them to be super confident, but you don't want them to be so confident that it kind of starts to clash. But I don't know, how do you think about it?
Again, I think for me, I could be wrong. There's no right or wrong. There's always how you feel you want to be. Whether it helps you to succeed or not is the bottom line. But for me, again, I say it all comes down to like people, and I say forget football. I don't, football's football, but let's do people. Like I always care about you. I always care about your family. Don't have to be to the point where I'm sitting with them every night watching a film, but I'll always ask how they are. I'll always ask what you've done. I'll always ask where you've been. And that's probably with a few players, or a couple of players, one of my biggest struggles this year was they couldn't take the fact sometimes, especially the ones who maybe wasn't playing or felt they should be playing and didn't. And I would be like, how are you? How you getting on? How you been? How's your family? How's this? If you need this, if you need that, let me know. Because football's one thing and life is another. And then if I'm not playing you, you're then, well, why are you? How are you? How you doing? How's your family? It's as if like is it just to cover the smoke of me not playing? No, mine is you are a person. I'm a person. If you're a toilet cleaner, I'm going to treat you the same way that I am going to treat this guy who's on $100,000 a week or whatever he is, the same way. And I think that was a little bit, and I'm not going to change, but what I might need to do is just be a little bit more distant. And that's a shame, because I like to be hands-on with everybody and be transparent and be kind.
What's the role as their manager as also a mentor, Omer? How do you think about that? Like, and this kind of goes to character development, because I think the best mentors I've had have always they've crossed the line from manager massively. And it's the thing I've admired about them most in the end is that they've kind of stepped out of that. And you're talking about that role, right? Where, you're the boss of the football team. Cool. Got that. You're talking about something which is different, like kind of like actually you're a mentor, you're more involved in their lives perhaps, and you're taking interest in the person which, after the final whistle, whatever it is. It's like that, it's that bit. So how do you think about that from a mentor manager part? And like, it sounds like you kind of, you're not like a typical business guy. It's more than soccer for you. It's more than football. This is about nurturing maybe men too, is like to be better, especially if character's important. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think so. And I hope that is not detrimental to where I want to get to, because at the end of the day, it is a business and you have to win. And to be successful, you have to win games and win trophies, and now I want to do all of that, but not at the expense of being a ruthless, horrible person who don't care about anybody else but himself. I'd rather not be successful if that is what I'm going to be. Maybe that's my downfall. Fine. But for me, nurturing, like I said, it's a natural thing for me because I've done it since I was young. If I look back, like I said to you, when I was a senior pro, I did it naturally with the younger players. I speak to nearly every player that I've sort of crossed my path as a player or as a coach. I speak to most. They call me, they ask me advice, whatever it might be. And it's just the way I want it to be. I want it to be that way. And as coming back to your question, especially like senior players, I'll do that throughout the squad anyway, but senior players who are looking like they want to go into the role of coaching and managing, I think it's important for us in our industry to help them. And, whether it's them coming, like I had our captain at the time is Joe Rules last year, and he was injured, and we'd get him in. He'd come and do the analysis with our pre-game analysis. We'd sit him. It was only on a few occasions because it was quite thick and fast. He's getting treatment. You can only fit it in when you can fit it in. But he would come in the office with the staff, and we'd go through a couple of game plans. And so he's looking at like what's the working day, what's it look like, and like he came back, he was like, well, I didn't realise it was so in depth of this or that or the other, and so it opens the eyes to this ain't just a walk in the park. This ain't just you go out, you put your boots on, go out and put a session on. This is like come in at 7:00, sit down, do MDT meetings at 8:30, know everything about everybody, get ready and put a session on that's going to get the outcomes that you're looking for in the day through the week. It's highly detailed, and it's hard work. But if you love it, you do it.
Tell us about that in a bit more detail, if you can. Like, obviously, it looks glamorous, right? Yeah, especially I don't know so much about the management side of things, but the player life looks pretty glamorous. But tell us, like, how did you stay sharp? How do you what do you do in that capacity? Because I'm trying to remember the guy I interviewed. I think it was he runs the female team for a Saudi team now, and he was saying that he was at West Ham, and he said the pressure there was just intense. Everything was like I'll dig around. Let's see if I can find it. But he was saying that he just wanted, like, it was just so intense at West Ham. It was like boom, but actually no, sorry, he went West Ham and then he went to Man U. And he was one, like, it wasn't necessarily not the lead manager there or lead coach, but he was certainly involved as part of the coaching team. And anyway, long story short, it was just like, he said the pressure, especially when he went to Man U, was just bonkers. And I'm curious, like, how did you, like, what was your preparation for that environment? Like, how did you make sure you were ready to perform in that climate? What were you doing? What did life look like in that kind of context?
As a coach, yeah. Do you know what? There was always, like, when you're going into, I've always felt like I've been ready for the last 3 or 4 years now for this position. So I knew when I was Watford first team coach, when I was Cardiff assistant coach, and if the opportunity come, I knew I was ready. Right. So I've been doing it anyway. But obviously, the Championship is ruthless. It's so full on, and it's like so many games, and it is so quick turnaround. It is relentless, and it is tiring, and it is physically demanding, and it is mentally demanding. I love the job. I love the fact that you said, this job is players, the lifestyle, the profile. It is. They get paid ridiculous amounts of money to play football. So we have to be thankful for what we've been gifted with, or what we've had to work hard for to get to. But coming back to your question, I just think that it's a mindset. It's a mindset of you can rest when you can rest. That's my mindset anyway. You got to get the job done, and you got to do it well, and everyone's got to be ready.
Interesting.
And that, like I said, that is that comes. Maybe that's wrong, and maybe it's like they talk about burnout and they talk about things like that. But I think if you manage it well enough, it is a full on, and it is really aggressive. And as you start to get your way of working going, it becomes easier because there's no like second guessing. You know what it looks like, and everyone's comfortable with what it looks like. Like for instance, our running day. Let's say my running day, for instance, would be I'd come in at 6:37, go and try and do a run if I could. Come in, all staff would be in probably by 8:00. 8:30 we would be in an MDT meeting. 8:30 or 9 we'd be in maybe it was 9:00 MDT meeting. Everybody.
What's an MDT meeting?
So, sorry.
So yeah, what is it?
Multidisciplinary teams. So you would have medical, we'd have S&C, we'd have all the staff, we'd have kit man. For a 10-15 minute talk, I'd have all the wellness of players. So which players fill in wellness sheets online, and then it comes in. We'll have it on the screen. Who's tired? Who slept 5 hours, or who slept 8 hours? Who saw in what area? Who's had a bad night, or who's had a problem with a family or whatever. So we'd have a chat about that. We'd isolate whichever players needed isolating. Then medical would talk, and it would be about, who's not going to train, who's injured, who's coming back, who's not, what we can do with him, and what we can't do with him in the training session. So we'd have to micromanage the players within the practices to get out what we need, but also not to push them past where we feel they'll break. S&C then we'll talk about what numbers we need to try to get to in training sessions. So if it's 5K on average for the team, and high speed running, for instance, how quick they run at what speed for a period of time. We then create practices. I already have the practices in my mind regarding what we're doing, working off the back of the last game, and create practices that will get out the outcomes physically, but also tactically, that we're working towards the next game. Then staff will talk about what the practice looks like and what the minutes are in between, and how the rest is between the first practice, second practice, third practice, etc. Kitmen will know what equipment needs to be used, and then we'll go off. We'll have so that'll be at like 9, let's say, for like 15-20 minutes, and then the boys normally out for 10:30 for prehab, so they'll go and do prehab, stretching, all that stuff after they've had their strap-ins and all that, and then we'd give you out on the grass for 11, and you're probably looking for an hour to 90-minute practice, short, sharp, delivered, and then whatever extras we want to do with players, like you're talking about earlier regarding confidence levels, or developing younger players, so doing ILPs, individual development plans, IDPs, and then go in food, and then potentially do some extra stuff with other players, or rest and then start again.
And then your day in particular, so you're coordinating that, but you're not necessarily doing it all. You're kind of coordinating a bunch of that. Yeah.
So there'll be within the practices. Then I'll say to one of the coaches, right, do you want to deliver that? We're working on our session today. You can deliver that one. You know what you're doing with that one. We'll discuss how we want to do it. You can do those bits. I'll do this bit and step in there and do that. And then sometimes I'll decide on a day, I want to take a little bit of a backseat and watch from afar, and just like watch character and watch application and watch all those things we were speaking about again. If I'm not sure about somebody, whether I want to play him or not, what are the decisive moments that I choose? I'm going to say, yeah, he's ready now. He's not ready. No, he's not doing this properly. He's causing problems. He's being dysfunctional within the group or whatever. And then obviously, depending on what days, so we'll come off the grass, I'll have to go and do press, which was more likely on a Thursday, go and do press, talking about the game coming, the game before, any problems, transfers, injuries. And then gear up for the next day.
Like, it's you say it kind of flippantly almost. It's quite interesting, and it's like oh yeah. I feel like the scrutiny you're under is probably the most challenging part. I'm curious, like, you came off the so Cardiff were they got relegated last year.
Is that relegated, right? Yeah.
And I'd imagine as a manager, when everything you just described would be fine if everything was going your way. But when it's not, and you've got despondent players, or you're not able to get results, or like, how do you navigate that when you're also doubting what you're doing, perhaps? Or did you ever doubt? Or like, how do you navigate that where you're like, oh man, it's not working, and like, are we doing the right thing? Like, how do you avoid that kind of conundrum where you're in?
No, I think I never doubted anything. I think our performances at times was very good. I think our performances were inconsistent due to certain factors. Again, young players playing. And it weren't just down to young players, even senior players inconsistent, or we weren't robust enough to be able to produce performances game in, game out. Changing squad or players because they weren't able to play. There was a whole load of variables as to why things didn't quite maybe go the way we wanted. A bit of misfortune on some of the games. 4 or 5 games we should have won that we drew. That takes you to 8 more points. It takes you well out of that bottom 4. But coming back to the question again is no, never doubted anything. But what you have to manage, I think, as a head coach is, like, they called me the Tinker Man at a certain stage, some people, because I was having to change the team. But you've got to understand the context behind it. So you're dealing with the press and you're dealing with the fans saying one thing and putting you in a box of, what they feel you are, but not really knowing why you've had to do what you've done, and without coming out and saying it, which would lay blame on certain people or certain aspects of the situation. You have to suck it up and deal with the insult, which is fine as a head coach position, but they're the things that are more important to manage, rather than whether you believe in what you're doing. Definitely believe in what I'm doing, and I know that moving forwards it will evolve, it will get better, and it will improve, and it will get results. But yeah, so it's more the micromanaging of the problems that come from the problem.
Got you, as in like the external stakeholders, as it were, in that context. Yeah, okay. I can imagine there must be, and also they're also fishing for a story, right? Which I find with media, they're looking for a headline, they're looking for a reaction, they're looking to piss you off. Like, seeing I'm curious just to throw the reflections on Ange and Tottenham, and I sit in Australia and go far out. Like, I think he's done Australia an incredible service in terms of demonstrating, how character actually, like how you can be as a Premier League manager. I think you often could look at his interviews and they were very honest. They were very, like, he would say we were crap, or, and I thought it was really admirable at that elite level where typically you just get a bit of a fluff answer sometimes. Like, do you look at him as what's your take on it? And would be probably a good answer. Good question.
I think when you get to a certain level, again, like Ange, like a lot of the managers in the leagues, you can say what you want and get away with it more.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
If I'm honest, I mean, there's some things that some elite senior managers said this year, even in Championship, said and they didn't really. Yeah, they got a little bit of a slap for it, and then it ended. And then you think to yourself, wow, like I said one thing regarding some of the fans this year, and it didn't go down too well, and on reflection, it wasn't right, but it's a lesson learned, if you like. But what I'm saying is, if you put context behind the whole interview, that one little bit, like you're talking about, the one line that they wanted to produce, is what caused the issue. When the whole conversation was very, very complimentary to all my fans, because I love the fans, and it was a small minority. But like coming back to Ange, I found he had a lot of stuff with fans, and it was openly. He would have a spat with fans on the side, and it can happen. But I do think that your profile helps you to not get away with it more, but be able to talk your mind more. But I am sort of the same sort of mindset of Ange. I think honesty and being honest. I think if you say, and it depends on what people you've got. If you're happy to sort of say your players were crap, didn't perform, you got to be a little bit careful with it as well, because you lose them sometimes, and if you lose them, you can lose everything.
Yeah. Okay. quick question. Well, maybe not quick, but what are you most proud of, Omer, when it comes to your management? Or actually, yeah, you can broaden it out too, maybe as a player.
Well, obviously, what I'm proud of is my family and my wife and my kids and my immediate family, everyone in it. I'm proud to be part of my family. That's the most important thing. But in my football, like I said at the start, really, becoming a football, you don't realise how hard it is to become a professional footballer until you see thousands and thousands of players fail over the course of their coaching career. So to get through and become a football player, one is just it's an achievement in itself, to play at a good level, a very good level. Secondly, I think people always say, "Oh, you keep coming back," and I don't know if it's I don't know, come back. I've never gone anywhere, but it's sort of like, it's I just keep going. I think I'm proud of myself that my dad, my family sort of helped me to become a person that is resilient. And hopefully I can portray that to my children as well, that if you keep working hard, just keep working hard. That's all you can ask of yourself. And if it don't work, it don't work. But make sure that you know where you're going and what you want to do. I'm focused on, I've always said, I said it as a player, I want to be a top professional player. I want to play in the World Cup and win the World Cup. I didn't quite achieve it. Didn't quite achieve that. I didn't get nowhere near that, but I become a player. I earned a very good living, and it's enabled me to move on to coaching. And as a coach, I always say I want to be an elite manager, and potentially, I'm from England. I've been born in England. I want to be a Premier League manager. That's what I want to achieve. What will happen? I'm going to be a La Liga manager or whatever manager at top level. But I want to achieve the most I can achieve in my career. If I land on, if I reach for the stars, land on the moon, then so be it.
I love that. How do you navigate, just maybe the last question around quote unquote failure, right? When you don't achieve the dreams or the goals, or how do you think about that? How do you what kind of mindset? Because I feel like with professional sport, you face failure every single game, it's right there in your face. You have to play to win. You take risks, and that if you take a risk, you might lose. And it's so obvious. And I feel like that's what is so remarkable actually about athletes and professional sports people, is that they just keep doing it. They keep showing up. They keep going for it. And I think, where I look at the corporate world, is so play safe, play not to lose. It's so just about average. So how do you think about that? How, what's your kind of mindset around that?
What was the question again? I forgot what you just asked me. I'm thinking about something else there. Sorry.
No, that's cool. About
sorry, Mark. No, ask me that again. So go on.
Tell me about your mindset around failure, facing failure. Mindset. How do you navigate it? How do you keep showing up every single day?
I think that's all part of the challenge.
Right.
I'm honest. I think trying to get better every time. If you've done well, how can you get better or sustain? Or if you've not been able, you've failed at what you've tried to do, or not been able to quite. We always try to say, with failure, there's no failure, there's learning. You don't fail, you learn. And I think it's just that competitive edge of, all right, let's go and have another go at this now, and try and get it right. I don't know. I don't know if it's a thing that's developed over time with. Well, I suppose it's a difference between people that carry on doing it and people that don't. I don't know. I don't know really. I can't give you the clear answer on that one. It's a good question. Why do you keep doing something if it's not going well? But
I think it perhaps speaks to how you've had that longevity. If you don't see it as a lot of people see it as fatal.
I look at this, Michael. Let's look at this current situation this year with Cardiff. I'm trying to answer your question in sort of a practical way. We got relegated. I got sacked 3 games before the team went down. We still had a chance to stay up in those 3 games. I still believe those 3 games, me and my staff would have done enough to try to get the points to stay up. But we didn't get the opportunity to do it. That's the first thing. So that for me is, in my mind, I'm looking at now, right, let's try to put some context. We speak about context behind what we've done. I went from having an average age of 28, 29, 30 to I think 24. So I've bedded in youngsters, played youngsters who are now ready to play this year. Definitely more than ready to play this year. They played a lot of games in the championship, and we've added value and assets to the business, as far as I'm concerned. We had some memorable performances that's gone down in history. We beat Swansea 3-0 at home, which the club hasn't done for a long period of time. We went to the 5th round of the FA Cup, which gave the fans some hope and something for them to enjoy over the course of the season. With all the adversity, we brought in players. We brought in Yusuf Saleh, who I brought in January, who scored 10 goals from January till the end of the season, which makes him a top striker in that league already, having paid 2.6 million or whatever it was. He's probably worth, if not double, treble that, and people will want him as an asset to the club, an investment. And I believe this year, of course, don't want to go down. I do want it to survive.
Yeah, of course.
It was always a struggle from the start. When you've got 1 point at the start of the season and you're 9 points behind fourth from bottom, and you catch that up and go above it, and then you're flirting with it all season, you're talking about confidence levels again, you're talking about players being worried, you're talking about, there's so many factors that we were having to play with to try to stay above it. And then the bottom line of that is this year, I believe the structures that have been put in place and the environment that we're talking about would have been now added onto. Now it's starting again with another group, which is fine. Hopefully this management will try to do that. So this is how I work. When you try and answer your question about failure, look at the successes within that failure. And there is a lot. So it isn't just about, unfortunately, winning and it is the major part of the competition, but you've got to understand that if you're not winning all the time before it, why do you think you're going to start winning every time now? When you've been flirting with relegation for 4 years or whatever it is, inevitably sometimes it might happen. So that's how I try to put my mindset in a place that says, you know what, you're ready to go again. And when you do, you're taking all of those learnings, all of those successes with you to become even better.
Love that. Omer, awesome. Last question. What's your top advice to a leader who's got a team at the moment, perhaps not performing, can be in a sporting context, could be in a non-sporting context? What would you say to them? How do you turn things around? What are your top advice?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't had a chance to turn anything around yet. I can't give advice on something I haven't done, but I do believe, I always say the same thing, work ethic, character, application, honesty, integrity, and keep trying to do the right thing, and I think recognizing what the right thing is obviously an art in itself. And keeping people in a good place, not just yourself. Make sure you recognise everyone has problems, everyone has issues, and if you can try to help solve all those issues together, I think it leads to a better environment, a better place.
I love that. Okay. How can people reach out to you if they've got a question or if they'd like to keep in contact? What's the best place to connect with you?
I was on Twitter. I come off of that because I was getting battered. So came off of that. I'm on Instagram. I don't even know what the Instagram thing is, Michael, to mention, but I'm on there. There's a tick on it.
We can link to it.
It is me. And I suppose you can, if they come directly to you, they can. I'm on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, and if they want to come through you, I'm quite happy for you to pass on my email address or my telephone number or whatever it might be. Awesome,
man. Awesome. You've been such a humble and unexpectedly kind of gentle kind of guest, actually. I don't know if this is just your podcast persona or if this is, obviously it's the first time we've connected, and it's, I thought you might be this uber competitive, soccer type, just like, come on, let's bash down, let's kick down the doors. It's like, it's such a very different energy. So yeah, look, massive thanks for taking the time out of the chat to us. It's been delightful. Thanks heaps.